Welcome to the Broken to Build podcast, a refuge for authenticity. Each episode, you'll be reminded that our scars are the foundation of our strengths. You will feel seen, known, and loved as you find beauty in the brokenness while you build the extraordinary life you were created to live. Hey there, welcome back. Thank you for joining us at the Broken to Build podcast. And today we've got an amazing guest, Jaelene Daniels, who is a wife and a mother and a soccer player and all the other things that go into that. She's got an incredible story, so I'm so thankful that she's with us today. And Jaelene, just start by telling me a little bit about yourself, your life before soccer, and then in layman terms, I don't know a lot of soccer words. I don't know. My husband is a soccer player, and he will talk to me about, oh, this person played for this team, and this person played for this team, and I kind of sit and stare with a blank face because I don't actually know exactly what he's saying. So in layman's terms, tell me about yourself, and then in layman's terms, tell me about your soccer experience.
Okay. First off, I love that because it reminds me of my mom. She has 4 kids, all of us played soccer, still has no idea what's going on.
Okay,
so
good.
I love that.
Okay, good.
So my name is Jaelene. I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. Grew up there, born and raised. Played soccer since I was little, since the age of 4. Both of my older siblings played, so it was just like my way to hang out with them.
In the family.
Yes.
Okay.
So it just kind of ran through the family. Ended up loving it, so I played all through high school. Got a full-ride soccer scholarship to Texas Tech University. And then in 2015... Is that
D1?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Big 12, still Big 12. But
okay.
It's transitioned with a whole bunch of schools now, so I don't know who's in it anymore,
okay.
to be honest. But yeah, so it was D1, got to play there. And then in 2015, I got drafted in the National Women's Soccer League. I went 7th overall in the first round, which was really cool. So
you're really good. It's what in layman terms, you're really good.
I never believed it for a long time, but the Lord is helping me to own that. And yes, I do believe I was really good.
Awesome.
So I got to play, I got drafted to a team in New York, played there for 2 years. And then that team was bought and sold and moved to North Carolina. So that's actually where I'm currently at. Played there for 5 years, and also got to play with the national team for 2 years. So
wow,
yeah,
that's
really
awesome.
Exciting.
And that's in North Carolina. That's where you met your husband.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So in 2018, so we moved there in 2017, me and my team. 2018 is when I met my now husband, Matthew. We've been married for 4 years. We have 2 girls. We have a 3-year-old named Zoe and a 6-month-old named Mariah. And they are keeping us busy.
Yeah.
But they are the best. I never thought I'd be a girl mom. I was like so set, thought I'd have all boys.
Yes. Yeah.
We're on girl number 2, and I'm thanking God.
Oh,
for
that's
our girls.
so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Jaelene's story went national. So I would just love to hear for you to tell people a little bit about the background, what kind of led to it, and I don't want to give any of it away. So you go ahead and tell your story.
Well, I'll share a little bit of my testimony. It kind of ties into what would happen with the national team.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in a Christian home, like came out of the womb, knowing who God was. But I never really had like a personal relationship with him. It was very much just out of fear. Like our family served the Lord. It was your way to heaven. So I just like bought into it.
Fire insurance.
Yeah.
Keep me from hell.
Yeah. Whatever's going to keep me that direction, we'll go that way. So I was living that way for a long time. Soccer and my faith were really the 2 things that kind of dominated my time. So fully invested in both areas. It wasn't until my junior year in college where I started really intentionally walking with the Lord. I actually had an injury my junior year that really I thought was going to be the end of my soccer career. I ended up getting a blood clot in my left leg.
Oh, wow.
Started in the middle of my calf, ran all the way up to my groin. We had no idea that was the issue. I'd had this leg pain for a couple of months before we finally saw a doctor, went and got an ultrasound done, and that was what it was.
Yeah.
And so went into immediate surgery the day that we found out. It was actually April 3rd, my mom's birthday. So I was like, happy birthday,
oh my
Mom.
Gosh.
I had no idea what a blood clot was. So to me, I was just like, okay, we get it out.
Let's get it taken care of.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So I actually went into surgery. They were on a plane into Lubbock. That's where I was. And when I came out, the doctor was pretty much just shot it straight. It was just like, we didn't get anything out of your leg. We think we're gonna have to put a stent in the next morning, and you'll be on blood thinners the rest of your life. You won't be able to play contact sports.
Wow.
just your life's going to look a lot different
right.
if something doesn't change overnight.
And you're so, like, this could be the end of my career as I know it.
And I knew nothing else. Like, I was getting a degree at Texas Tech, had no idea what I wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
The league had just started my junior year, so my coach was like, hey, you should put your name into the draft. And I was pretty skeptical. I was like, I don't really know if I want to keep playing.
Yeah.
And then we get in this situation, and I'm like, this is so messed up.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I was going to be able to at least decide. And
yeah.
So I was pretty angry with God. I didn't really understand, I guess, why everything was happening. And so it was just one of those things where the only person I could think to blame was him. So I was pretty genuinely just kind of beside myself. And so my mom actually, she's really the spiritual leader of our home for a long time. She was the one who was like, we're going to go to church. I'm going to teach you all the things scripturally and just like pray that you one day accept this as your own.
Yeah.
So that night she was just kind of praying over me. And I was on some pretty heavy painkillers all night long just because I was in a lot of pain from this clot. And every time I woke up, she was praying. And I just was like so moved by her like passion to just, and it wasn't like God heal her so she can keep playing soccer. Of course she knew I wanted to, but it was just like, I don't want her life to like look so different at the age of 20. Like this is crazy. And so she was just full of faith praying. And so I just kind of challenged myself in that moment. I didn't tell her or my dad, just said this prayer in my hospital bed of just like, Lord, I know I haven't really figured this thing out with you, but if you would just provide a miracle, you know, I'll learn what it means to follow you. It wasn't even one of those things where like, I'll start tomorrow, you know, it's just like, I don't know what it looks like, but I'll find out.
Yeah.
And so the next morning we went into surgery and a couple hours later came out. And the first thing the doctor said was, I don't believe in God and I don't believe in miracles, but your vein was completely open. We got everything out. You'll be on blood thinners for 3 months.
Oh my gosh, I have chills.
And you won't have a problem with this moving forward. And it was just in that moment where, again, I hadn't told anyone. So I just had this, like, come to Jesus moment of, like, not only did he hear me, but he healed me. Like, he answered me and just met me in, like, the most personal way that I think he could have met me in that moment.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, okay, what does it look like to follow you? So thankfully, I got to put my name in the draft still.
And that rocked your faith, like, in the best way possible.
Totally.
Like, there was,
like, this whole, like, before I came to like this moment with him, it was very much like I'm going to party during the week, gonna do the whole college scene, go to church on Sunday, even if I'm hungover. Like,
I've been there, done that.
Yeah, you're just like, I'm going to do all the right things, quote unquote, but like I don't really care what it means to actually like serve and follow you. And so really from that moment on, it was like, I'm going to find a small group. I'm going to like find someone to mentor me. And I did. Like, it was just very much like, okay, if God is who he says he is, I'm going to like discover what that actually looks like. And so that was really where it started. And I think like the Lord was so kind to like put me in a home where I had all of that foundationally, but then to like push me forward in my own way was, I think, really unique.
So through the blood clot, through the miraculous no need for stints and that kind of stuff, that is really when you grew up in a Christian home, and that's really when your faith became your own. That's when you decided to own what you were raised in. Yeah, essentially. It was just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, I've had all these tools growing up, and now I actually kind of know what to do with them and how to pursue the Lord, you know, with all of these things that he's given me up until this point. So yeah, it was just kind of like, here we are, what's next? And so I thankfully got to put my name into the draft. Okay. And I was like, soccer almost got taken away once, not going to do that again. Yeah. So I did. And then I ended up getting drafted to a team in New York. It was the Western New York Flash at the time. Okay. And so it was like they had been around for a while. This was the third attempt at a league in the U.S. Okay. And so this team had existed before. And so like some bigger names, Abby Wambach, Carly Lloyd, a few of those national team players had been on that team. I have heard those names. Yes. I couldn't tell you about them, but I have heard them.
Really, really good soccer players.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and so that was the team that I got drafted to. And so I'd be there for 2 years, and then that team got bought and sold. So essentially just kind of name change, location change, but same team. To Raleigh, North Carolina. Oh, okay. Yes. So they brought you with, you didn't go to another team. They brought you. So it's really like common for trades to happen a ton. Yeah. And this was just one of those unique situations where an entire team just kind of like got up and moved to another state. Okay. So like same coaching staff, same players, different front office, just keep it local. But yeah. Okay. So, would be there for the next like 5 years. Okay. There. Yeah. And that's where you met Matthew. Yes. Which I love that. I feel like that's so God. Like you're in the right place at the right time, and he brought you to
your future.
Yes.
Which is so cool. So how did you meet Matthew?
Yeah, so we actually met through one of my teammates. So a girl named Elizabeth Eddy, still one of my closest friends. She was in our wedding. She is like, I don't know for anyone listening or even for you, but the Enneagram is like such a big thing.
Yeah.
She's a 7, so she's like totally like,
Life
let's
at the
go
party.
out. Yeah, like we're gonna find the friends, bring them in. And so when we moved to North Carolina, we knew nobody, and we really were like the only like pretty intentional believers on our team. Like we want to find a church, we want to get plugged in. And so she was just kind of out making friends.
Yeah.
And one night she came back and she was like, Jay, I met this pastor. He's putting on this like youth thing for youth pastors. Do you want to go? And I was like, Elizabeth, we're not 1, part of a church. 2, we're not pastors.
No, thank you.
Like 3, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I was like, you go, you meet anyone cool, let me know.
Yeah.
And so she did go. And she met Matthew in the food line. So it was like a dinner and then some teaching. And so they were like chatting it up. She's from California. He lived there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So they both are like exact same people.
Okay.
I think like Elizabeth is the female version of my husband.
Yeah. Okay.
And so they just like hit it off. She invited him to a game. And so like a couple months went by that we were checking out this church.
Did they ever date or they were like just friends?
Like homies. Like let's hang out. Yeah. And so we went to visit this church called The Summit in North Carolina, and it was a Saturday night service. And so we got there. Matthew comes in walking late, which this part of the story just kills me every time because he came in late, and there was a guy on our men's team that was with us, and he was like this big black guy, like totally looks athletic.
Yeah. And
so Matthew comes in, and he like sees him. We're all getting ready to sit down. Worship had ended, and Matthew just comes up and like hits him on the shoulder and is like, "You're cool, dude," and like sits down. And my friend on the guys' team was like, "Do you know him?" I was like, "No." "Do you know him?" He's like, "No." That's all he said to him. So, of course, at the end of the service, Matthew realized that Elizabeth is also on the other side of us. And he's like, "Elizabeth, what's up?"
Oh, my gosh.
So we got introduced there. And so he thought I was with this guy. And he was like, "Oh, you know, like, she's cute, but, like, taken."
Yeah.
And he wore a purity ring, actually. So I also was like, man, he's attractive, but he's married.
He's married,
like,
yes.
Go figure.
Yeah.
So he came to a game. We take pictures and do autographs at the end of games.
Okay.
So one of the friends that came with, I took a picture with, like, him and his friends. And he like looked at my Instagram.
Yeah.
Day and age of social media. And he was like, "I don't see the black guy in there." Yeah. And so he like messaged me and he's like, I had like no, like, I'm going to get this girl. He was just like, "I think I met you at the church. Like, it was so cool to see you play. Like, would love to like hang out some more and like hear your story." And so I like went to his page and I was like, "Elizabeth, this is the guy." And he's like, "Yeah, he's so cool. Like, I've had lunch with him before. You should totally do it." And so we like went and had lunch 3 hours later, like hanging out. And after that night, we just kind of started casually hanging out until eventually his pastor was like, "Dude, take her on a date.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's time." So yeah, we just kind of in a roundabout way just got connected. And, yeah.
And then you were still playing at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was 2018.
Okay.
And so still playing. Hadn't been with the national team for a while. Part of my story goes back to that where in 2017 with all the like jersey stuff that had happened. So this was after all that, and he kind of like learned some of that story and was like, "I'd love to hear it."
Go back a little bit to 2017.
Okay. So actually at the end of 2015 going into 2016, I got my first invitation to the national team. And so I was super pumped, was not expecting it. This was while we were still in New York and our team had pretty much come in dead last. So I was like shocked that I had gotten an invite just based off of our like team's performance.
Yeah.
And so they're like, "We'd love to bring you in." So I was with them right after they had won the World Cup, and they were trying to build a roster for their 2016 Rio Olympics roster. And so I was with them all the way up to that roster. I didn't make it. Essentially, it was like the last person cut, which was like so heartbreaking to be like that close. But I think the Lord really used it just to like grow me of like, look how close you can get in the sense of like, I just had like such like a lack of confidence in my abilities. And I feel like he just kind of like used that season to be like, you're there. Like, stop doubting yourself.
Yes.
So I used that next year to just kind of like work my way back into the team. So in 2017, in May of 2017, I got another call finally, and I was like, man, this is it. I'm so excited. So I was in Chicago when my mom called me. We were about to play Chicago that night. And she's like, "Hey, did you see the announcement that the national team put out?" I was like, "No, what's up?" She's like, "I'm going to send you a screenshot. Just kind of tell me what you think." And so she sends me this picture, and it's an announcement that the team's going to be wearing rainbow-themed jerseys for Pride Month. And so my initial like reaction was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to do this. But just
Yeah.
was like, okay, like I feel like I need to pray about this. I'm not really sure how to approach this.
Yeah.
So I told her, I was like, I don't know. Like I have a game tonight. I'll think about it. Thanks for letting me know kind of thing. It was super short. And so right after that, I felt like I should call my team chaplain. So in the league, every team has a chaplain. Mm-hmm. And I was really close to mine. And so I was just like, hey, I just found out this news. Love to get your thoughts. And she was like, can I give you a suggestion? I was like, absolutely. She's like, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I think you should pray about it for 3 days or however long you have. Invite some people in to pray and fast with you and just like ask the Lord to like give you direction.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, like I don't even have time. I found out this was like a week, like down to 7 days of us leaving.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'll give it 3 days. So
Yeah.
we got back from Chicago. I called my mom, my sister, the mentor that I had mentioned, that I had started asking to mentor me back in Texas, and just was like, hey, this is the situation. Could you join me in prayer?
Yeah.
Would love the Lord just like speak into this. So after 3 days of just like intentionally praying about it, trying to be intentional about being in the Word, just really felt like he was asking me not to wear the jersey. And so my first thought was like, how am I supposed to approach this?
Right.
At the time,
Right.
my coach was Jill Ellis. She has a partner. She had a
Yeah.
child. Like
Yeah.
I really didn't have a relationship with her yet in
Yeah.
terms of like she knew what I believed, but like wanted to like still be a part. So it
Right.
was just kind of this awkward, messy of like, Lord, I feel like you're asking me to do this, but I don't know how to handle it.
Yeah. Because so often those things get misconstrued. Like,
Totally.
well, I don't want to wear the rainbow jersey, so that means that you're homophobic or that you hate
Yes.
people, or and that's not it.
No.
But-
But it comes across that way.
Right.
And
right.
especially when you don't have relationships established with people who may have that
Right.
relationship in
Right.
their life. And so I just was like, gosh, Lord, like you're gonna have to give me the words for this one.
Yeah.
So I ended up giving her a phone call, just like told her like, this is what I believe. This
Yeah.
this is not like a personal like
Right.
I hate you or a vendetta
Right.
about
Right.
this community
Or
It was just
judgment
like,
or anything. It's,
totally. It was
yeah.
just like, this is what I feel like the relationship I have with God is asking
Yeah.
me to do.
Yeah.
And so it was a pretty quick phone call again. She was just like, okay, if you can't wear the jersey, I can't bring you in. And I was like, can I just like maybe come in and like practice? Can I train with the team? Can you evaluate me that way? And
Yeah.
it was very much like, no, sorry, like we need to see you in a game. And those are the jerseys we're wearing. And so that was kind of like the start and finish of my national team career.
And how was that with, like, this is something that you worked your whole life for,
Yeah.
that all of a sudden felt like God was asking you to take a stand on something, but
Yeah.
in the result of that felt like losing everything that you had worked for your whole life.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, it just like came in waves, the emotions of it all.
Yeah.
It was just kind of this shock of I had worked my whole life for this, felt like the Lord had really established this like new confidence within me to like be a part of this team. And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden it's like the door was completely shut. And so I think it was just this constant going back to like the Word, back to my community of like, okay, like my soccer is not my end all be all.
Yeah.
This like sucks really hard in this moment.
Yeah.
But it also brought me back to that moment in the hospital bed where I prayed that prayer. And I feel like the Lord really used that to just ground me in my faith in that season of
Yeah.
like, of course I love soccer. I want to pursue soccer with all that I am. But I also made this commitment of like, I want to intentionally follow Jesus. And I want that to be the platform that like people associate me with, not so much like the Olympics and the World Cup. And that would be
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where it's like, gosh, like I want people to know that this is what I truly am living for. And this was, I guess, the way the Lord wanted that to be seen. And
Yeah.
so it was hard, but it was also, I think, it deepened my faith in ways I don't think it would have if
Yeah.
the decision had been different.
Yeah. So with that, when you made that phone call and they said, well, you can't play, was there backlash? Was there like, did you face any rejection or any, I mean, that felt like rejection probably at the beginning,
Yeah.
but did you have backlash after that?
Yeah, I had a lot of, and the funny thing is that it was all external.
Okay.
So I had been with my team since 2017 or 2015. This happened in 2017. But some of the girls that I had started playing with, I'd played before even playing professionally. So there was these relationships I already had, both with girls that were in same-sex relationships
Yeah.
and some that weren't.
Yeah.
And so I felt like within my team, people knew me.
Yeah.
There was this opportunity for them to know, like, Jay's intentional about this belief that she has in God.
Yeah.
She's in church. She's trying to, like, do all the things that like her faith is asking her to do. So I felt like when I made the decision, I thought the rejection was going to come from within my team. And I felt none.
But it didn't.
Yeah.
That's even cool. I would love to touch on that a little bit, because the people that you were surrounded by, whether heterosexual, homosexual, they knew your heart, and they didn't take offense. They knew it wasn't a direct insult to them. They knew that you loved them, that you weren't coming after that. So I think that's huge. That's huge that that's not where backlash came.
Yeah. And I think more often than not, I feel like people who probably have been in similar positions, maybe not public, but in that same kind of like predicament, it feels like when you have those relationships already set, it feels more easy to have those conversations.
Yes.
So before I even like called Jill and like it made like the headlines that it did, I had asked the girls on my team who I knew were in same-sex relationships of like, can I talk to you before all of this comes out there? And so we had conversations, and so often, or more than I thought I would receive, was people saying like, I would never put like a cross on my jersey. Like I would never ask someone who doesn't hold the same beliefs that I do to then support something that I don't also believe in. And so it was almost like one of those things where like at the time, and I'm sure that there was some offense. I mean, it's hard not to be offended in those situations, but I think because they knew me, that it was like, I know she's not personally coming after me. Or like that she wants to harm me, or that there's ill intent behind this. But like, I think just having those conversations made that space still safe for all of us. And so then the backlash was more of the media of like, she must be so toxic in the locker room. I can't believe the league would let her in. Like, does she not know her fan base? Like, and so it just kind of became this like snowball of, we have this openly homophobic person in the league. They're going to like destroy everything, you know? And it was like
character assassination.
And it was like, thankfully a lot of my teammates checked in pretty regularly of like, we know who you are. This isn't about you, you know? And so I think that was just the Lord's grace that I was able to be on a team for so long before this even happened, because so often you're traded and you're moving and you're trying to like establish yourself on teams. And so it was, I think, just, again, it was just God's hand over it all in that season.
And then how did that affect you personally? Like reading those things where it seemed like the media and maybe other people were bent on misunderstanding you. How did that affect your life?
That was the first time I saw counseling.
Okay.
And it was just because it was like, I am such a people pleaser, and it is so hard when you feel like you can't please anybody in those situations. And it's not to say the church, even to my response to it all, was even perfect, because I feel like so often, even in the church, that there's space where it's like, you should have worn it so that people would know that like we love everybody. And so there were so many ways you could approach situations. So I felt like I was getting backlash from everywhere. But then there's also just like my personality, where there's 100 positive comments, but you only see the one negative, and you focus on the one negative. So I think it was just a season where like the Lord's like, we also just need to get some actual like mental help in terms of like, you don't need to be on social media scrolling through this. You don't need to be reading about it. Like, it's not doing you any good. Like, you have your friends, you have your community. Who cares what a complete stranger in Portland, Oregon has to say about you, who has no idea who you are. And so I think just like even the growth in that of like, it's okay to ask for help, and like to feel weak in a lot of areas because your life is so public, even though you never asked for it to be public. So that I think was really hard to navigate that space.
For sure. Is there ways that propelled you forward? Like with the podcast, it's called Broken to Build. And I firmly believe that all the broken pieces in our life, the Lord normally uses those in order to build us more into his likeness, to help equip us to what we are called to build, whether that's community, church, business, like family, whatever that looks like. Is there pieces that of that brokenness that propelled you forward and changed you? And talk about that a little bit.
I think there was definitely a space in there where the Lord used it to build something different. And I think part of the issue with being a people pleaser is oftentimes like you're thinking that everyone's thinking so much about you and like what you're doing. And so I think in that space, the Lord was just continually reminding me that like it's also not even about you. Like, this is about me. It's about people understanding your walk with me so that then they get pushed into a walk with me, or at least start asking questions and discovering who I am. And so I think like in the tearing down of like, I thought I was going to stand on a podium one day. I was going to get to be the athlete that was like, I want to give God all the glory.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful for the athletes who do that, because it is something that, you know, is not as common as it used to be.
Yeah. And we need it.
Yes. But I also think the Lord was really cool and just like kind of rewriting the story in my own mind of like, you thought the platform was going to look this way, and here's the platform I actually had for you, in terms of like, now you get to encourage people, athletes specifically, who might be walking through this, of like, look at what's on the other side of that obedience. And it's like, I don't have a gold medal, but I have a husband, I have my kids.
Yeah.
I get to do things like this, do podcasts. I've been asked to speak and share my story in multiple churches and places. And so it's like, I'm still getting to use soccer in a really roundabout way of like, this was my story, this is where I got to, this is where the Lord actually took me, and I'm still getting to, you know, tell people that he's worth it at the end of the day. So it is very much of like, it felt like dreams were broken, but then it's like he also shifted of like, here's a new dream, and like, here's a new like path to like push you forward. So it took a while to get there for sure. It wasn't like, oh, okay, like this is cool, I don't get to play soccer anymore and live that dream. But I think over time it was just, he was like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. I see where you're leading in that. Yeah. And that, I think, has been really cool.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I love that, because how often does God do things the way that we think he's going to do? I don't know. Maybe in other people's lives that happens often. But in my life, it's like, oh, he could do X, Y, or Z. And he does something out of left field that I'm like not even expecting. And so I love that. And I love that you are open to that, to that picture looking different than what you thought it would be.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, he definitely used my husband too, to also just help shape that as well. Yeah. Which it happened once, and then it happened again with my team in North Carolina. Like, the league started wearing the jerseys, and I opted out again. Okay. And this time I had him with me. And I feel like that was so like strength building in that sense as well, of like, the first time it felt like I was kind of like walking through the fire alone. And this time it was like, okay, I have someone to like lean on, to encourage, and just that constant reminder of like, we're in this together. Like, the Lord's going to use this again. We don't know what it's going to look like. Again, like, as you said, of like, okay, he could do this. Maybe I could do this. Like, trying to go through all the options. Yeah. And it was like, no, like, the Lord's going to do this his way. Yeah. Which is always better. But in the moment, it's like, is this really the way you want to go? Yeah. Could we pick a different
Can we pray about
option?
That maybe?
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm thankful that I had him the second time around, for sure.
So tell me what you are doing with your life now.
Yeah. So me and my husband and our girls live in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so my husband is currently on staff. He's been on staff since we were married, but at our home church.
Okay. He's a pastor.
He's a pastor.
Okay.
He loves it. And so that's been really sweet. And then I personally am working for a nonprofit now. It's actually your husband's nonprofit.
I've heard of it. Tell me more.
Impact City FC. I'm the development director, so helping just to like bring in the funds to keep us going and be able to do what we do in different cities. So it's a soccer nonprofit, which I love because I still get to, again, kind of have my hand in the soccer space. Yeah. And so it's a club that is in 5 different cities. We're in Haiti now, which is really cool. Yep. We do city serve, so it's like we get to do camps in underserved neighborhoods with kids who probably wouldn't be in the U.S. soccer track just because one of their status as Americans, but then also financially. Yeah. It's insane how much it costs to play soccer. So it's cool to go in and offer that as like the rest of the world. That's like the game that everyone plays outside of America. But so then we get to offer scholarships too, and hopefully give them an opportunity to play at the collegiate level and maybe one day professionally. So we're kind of all in different spaces. We also do the chaplaincy. Yep. And so that has been huge because that impacted my walk. So I know how important that is to have chaplains in both the men's and women's side. And so, it's been cool to like step into this space. I have no background in fundraising, in marketing, in any of it. And so, one, I'm thankful your husband gave me a shot at this. But 2, it's just cool because soccer was such a big part of my testimony. Yes. So I love the fact that we're encouraging young people to have a relationship with the Lord and pursue their dreams, because you can do both. So it's sweet.
I love it. Yeah. And then you're a mom.
I'm a mom.
Full-time mom.
Full-time
two
mom.
girls.
Yeah, it's a blast. I am like, which is shocking now. If you hang out with me, I cry a lot. And I think it's just hormones these days.
Yeah.
But I like never shed a tear in the past.
Yep.
And I feel like becoming a mom, I'm like, okay, they're growing up.
Yes.
I can't handle it. But yeah, they're like the best. Our 3-year-old is like a hoot. I mean, she is just like her dad, which is so funny because all they do is like crack jokes at each other all day long at home, which is like
that's
so
awesome.
fun to watch. But I'm like, this girl is going to be, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Her and her sister are going to have a good time. So yeah, but they're the best.
Awesome. That's one of my favorite ages. That 3, like 18 months to 3 years old is just so
They're
fun.
becoming little people.
They
and
are.
You're just like, you're a human.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just this little baby, but I can like see your personality and you're getting features. And,
Oh my gosh, it's so fun. Well, tell everyone where they can find more information, follow you, all those good things.
Yes. So really the only space that I'm really active on is Instagram. So it's just my name, Jaelene Daniels. But you can see like updates and highlights on like my personal life. I also love to do like speaking. So there's a way to go onto my page and book me for speaking and love to do that.
What's been your favorite place that you've spoken at?
So me and my husband last fall spoke at Liberty's Convocation.
Oh, cool.
Liberty Universities. And we did it together. It was a Q&A, but I love getting to speak with him. I feel like we both kind of just feed off of each other. But it's just something that we get to do together, which is my favorite part. So I think that one was probably the most memorable. And it was one of the weekends. So I, again, growing up in a Christian home, Michael W. Smith was like who my mom listened to. Had no idea who was leading worship that day, and it was him. I probably looked so fangirly. Just like, he's here.
Did you get a photo with him?
Of course I did. But I made my husband ask because I was too ashamed. He's like, she really wants to get a picture. He's like, of course.
Oh my gosh, that's
he was so nice. But so that probably was my favorite one.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. This is so fun to just get to know you and your story. And
thanks for having me.
Really appreciate your time.
Yes.
Thanks again for joining us at the Broken to Build podcast, and we hope to see you next week.